Hi, my name is Lisa Kivirist, and I will kick off our show here, talking about our Soil Sisters group here in Wisconsin, and most importantly, the importance of women, particularly in our rural area, knowing each other and connecting and supporting, and how can we do that in more inclusive ways? How can we do that in ways that stimulate our rural areas sustainably and positively, and a bit of the journey we're on. So myself and my two dear friends and colleagues and co-conspirators, as you will hear, Dela Ends and Kriss Marion, we are honored to share some time with you. And we'd like to keep it as conversational as we can. So please, I'm glad we're on Zoom and we can throw things in the chat, ask questions. If folks wouldn't mind doing a quick intro in the chat of who you are, where you're from, any particular interests, things you're doing, farming, instigating or otherwise, that would be great. We'll share a little bit of ourselves, and also we'll stick a bunch of chats. Thank you, Kriss, for doing this for me. I realized I couldn't multitask and do PowerPoint and stick things in the chat, but we have a number of links on some of the things we'll talk about if they're of interest to you and you want to dig in further or learn more, and we'll cover some hopefully eclectic ground of ideas and our both challenges and successes in what we've done, and again, very much on that journey note. So the three of us are streaming to you from a beautiful sunny fall warm day here in southern Wisconsin. We are honored to work and farm on the ancestral lands of the Sauk and Misaki peoples. We have a lot of work and learning to do there, but we are privileged to live in such a beautiful place and to work the soil each in our own way. But Della and Kriss and I share that we are farmers, that we are community connectors, committed to each other and the folks in our area. And those are the stories we will share. So on that note, okay. So yeah, if you can, please give a shout out into the chat so we know who's here, and we will share a little bit of ourselves once I get this going. Hold on. Why am I? 1 second. I practiced this. This should work. Okay. Oh, I just clicked on it. Okay, sorry. I'm not here for tech support, mind you that. Okay, so the things we'll talk about is Della, Kriss, and I will share a little on ourselves, our own backgrounds, and the story. I'll talk a little bit about our origin story of organizing here in southern Wisconsin and some of the things we've done, tried, hopefully leave some seeds of ideas for you all too. And then three areas we'll talk about is change, and this is a story Della and Kriss and I share deeply of fighting for the right to sell cookies, but it's more than that. It's about collaboratively fighting for change and things we want to see in our rural areas. Commerce, Della's going to talk about a literally hot off the press new venture here that's been in the works for years that is so exciting, about a community kitchen co-op that has come together thanks to Soil Sisters leadership. And Kriss is going to talk really about leadership and the inspiring work she has done for all of us in stepping up to the public leadership plate and having our voices at the table. And then we'd love to take things wherever folks would like to go so we can continue the conversation. So me, Lisa Kivirist, this is my 5.5 acres here in southern Wisconsin in Serendipity Farm and Bed and Breakfast. My husband, John, and I have been here 25 years as of November 1st. So it's anniversary month. And we came up here, my mom still calls our normal phase of life, before then, working in Chicago in cubicles with things called paychecks, but realized early on that this wasn't for us, even though neither of us came from grandma's farm or had any ag or even rural background. We were both suburban kids, but something about the freedom, the stars, the being closer to the land, the independence, all of that in the rural countryside drew us. So we had an early midlife crisis then, is what I like to say. But we've been here ever since. Diversified on our farm. We run the farm on renewable energy. You see there of wind. Also, we just switched to solar last year. We run a bed and breakfast, which has been on hiatus under COVID, and the pandemic will surely be a theme of some of the things we talk about, and as it is on this whole conference, of how do we adjust, adapt, and come out stronger together. And we have the B&B. I do a lot of baking under Cottage Food. I brought out of our home kitchen, and I write a lot in the women and sustainability and ag space, work with a number of nonprofits on the women farmer and women's work side. I've worked with the good folks at WFAN for years. I was just remembering that some of you guys might have been in 2017 when it was the 20th anniversary of Women Food and Ag Network, and the conference was in Madison, and we had a bus tour. I was like, wait, you guys, y'all can come visit. And we had a bus tour coming down our way, a Soil Sisters bus tour where everybody visited all day, and that was lovely. And I look forward to doing that again. So, yep, and I write in this space as well. Some of my books, Homemade for Sale, is on cottage food startups, and Soil Sisters, a toolkit for women farmers, and things we'll talk more about. Now, one thing we do a lot around here that I think we're all kindred spirits on, especially at this harvest time, is sharing recipes. So we will stick a recipe in the chat. Thank you, Kriss, from each of us. Mine is my cornucopia beer cheese soup from our Farmstead Chef cookbook, which we got to kick Wisconsin off, right? So beer and cheese. But I won, my mom and I won third place, I'm proud to say, a couple of years ago in the Wisconsin State Fair local food category because it has over 12 local ingredients, and it's a hearty stick to your ribs warm soup. And we'll go on to Della.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dela Ends, and I've been running Scotch Hill Farm for about 30 years now. We were a CSA for 26 years, and we sold our farm to our youngest son and moved up the road to Innisfree and started a bed and breakfast, but like Lisa, we have been on hiatus with that also during COVID. Had guests a little bit, but not right now. So yeah, that was going great, but you have to drop back and punt sometimes, and so that's what we do. So yes, I've been farming for many years. We don't do CSA now, getting too old for that. A much smaller garden, which I sell items to the community kitchen, which I will talk to you about later. But it's pretty wonderful to be here with you and with my good buddies and share a lot of our experiences. So welcome, everybody.
Excellent. And Kriss just posted in the chat Della's Swiss chard quiche, which I recommend highly. I've made it many times, and it was one of the first meals at the community kitchen co-op. You will hear about shortly.
It's called Micah's Yummy Chard Pie in the Fair Share CSA cookbook. From asparagus to zucchini.
All right, should I jump in?
Yeah.
All right, I'm Kriss Marion, and this is my most recent picture of my place, Circle M Market Farm. We are outside of the village of Blanchardville, population 825. And this is my 1 acre of pollinator habitat, 3 years old. So you'll forgive the grass, working on those cool season grasses. But boy, it is just beautiful here in the fall, and we are enjoying it. I came here in 2005 from Chicago. Also, Lisa and I actually met at college, but didn't really start working together till we were both here on our farms. And I came because I had rheumatoid arthritis and I was in a really acute health situation. I was in bed and I was craving green spaces. I felt like they would help me feel better. And sure enough, in 2 years, I was off all of my drugs. So I believe that rural places are miracle working opportunities for people to heal and to thrive. And that's a big part of my story. On my farm, we've done a little bit of everything over the years. We started off with CSA. We had 165 members with a 4 acre farm, and we morphed into a farm to table CSA, and my kids started leaving and we started a bed and breakfast, and that went gangbusters beyond our wildest dreams. We had no idea people wanted to hang out and watch chickens peck so much. And during COVID, we closed, but we opened up this year with 3 vintage campers. Instead of renting in our farmhouse, we just rent campers, and we have been just mobbed. If you're thinking of doing ag tourism, we should talk, because I think it's the time. Anyway, I'm just so delighted to be here with you and be hanging out with my soil sisters from across the nation.
Excellent. Thank you, Kriss. And Kriss's recipe, maple dunkers, we basically put, I think, the Wisconsin State Senate and Assembly into a diabetic coma with these cookies, trying to get some legislation passed we'll talk about in a second. But they highlight our fine maple syrup in our state and are great for fall. All righty. Thank you. So I will chat a little here on our origin story of organizing. And my first piece of an idea for you is, if you start going down this path and bringing women together in your area, fantastic. And do take some notes because things are getting a little fuzzy for us. I think we started meeting in 2006, 2007, tomato. I don't know. I really don't remember anymore. But I do remember the setting. It was right around this time of year. It was November. And I was doing some women farmer training workshops with Moses. And I just did one at the community room at Willie Street Co-op in Madison. We had 30 women there, very learning circle format. We were doing introductions. And when the third woman stood up and said she was from Greene County, where I live, or trust me, our biggest crop is like white male patriarchy. This is not a progressive, crunchy, organic hipster farming spot, although we're trying to change that. But when the third person stood up, and I was like, who are you? And why haven't I met you? And most importantly, I want to meet you again, because as I think a lot of us can relate to, and please share in the chat, farming in a rural area can be very isolating, very lonely, especially when you're one of a few, and you might think you're the only organic or sustainable farmer in your area. So very much a drive to reconnect and keep connected. So what I did was, I remember I came home, a little pre-Google Maps. I literally drew an hour radius around our farm and invited any woman I knew there. The women I met at the co-op, and then I had crossed paths with Della at Moses conferences and others. And her introduction, my friends, didn't do her justice. Like, she is an organic pioneer. I mean, one of the first CSAs in Wisconsin, has had such a leadership role in founding organizations and serving on boards and all of that. So I had met her, but I was like, she lives by me. I was intimidated to even invite you over, Della. I know, hard to believe now, but at the time, and like Kriss was saying, she and I literally were at the first orientation picnic at Northwestern University, but we never met. We lived a couple blocks from each other in Chicago. We never met. It wasn't until we're both in the middle of nowhere, as my mother still calls it, that we meet and all cross-pollinate. So it's just a story of how things come together in interesting ways when the time is right. So we had a potluck in my front room in that November of 26-ish, and I had no agenda, no plans, no nothing other than let's just get together. And I'm sure this won't surprise any of you, but when we gather over good food and good wine, things happen, and most importantly, we want to meet again. So that's what we had started doing, and have basically met ever since in the virtual space, a little bit now during COVID, but we've met consistently since then. And our network has grown from probably those 12 women at the first one, including Kriss and Della, to a listserv now of over 200 women in our general area here, in our Tri-County area. We want to keep things regional. So that started that. And then we, in 2012, decided we needed to go public, because as I mentioned, where we are here in a very conventional farming area, that people didn't know there was these growing networks and women doing organic farming in interesting, creative, innovative ways. So we started with a tour that we're currently reinventing under COVID. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We had a longstanding partnership with the Wisconsin Farmers Union as sort of an informal entity, but grew to the point that we really needed some 501c3 status, but didn't want to start a 501c3. So for the last 2 years, we've been a project of the good folks at Renewing the Countryside that do a lot of this type of work and are growing to be more of a hub for farmer information, and most importantly, information on this type of rural networking. We'll talk more about that as well. But all about food, all about potlucks, all about us gathering around that. So this is a picture of a potluck we had in July. We got two in, one at Kriss's in June and one at April Pruja's in July, where we were still in that vaccine window before Delta started. And my learning there is gather when we can, because we really never know what the future holds. I would have stayed longer and ate more if I knew we would be back virtual, but so it goes. But this is the essence of what we do. And I promised myself I wouldn't describe our gatherings as I often would say, well, it's just a potluck. And a good friend wisely told me that no, Lisa, it's not just a potluck. That really dilutes the importance of women gathering and gathering over food and having that space to share and to connect. And as you'll see, so many stories and things have happened through those connections. So the bottom line from our story to share with you is just bring women together over food, over drink, and so we roll together. So we were able to get a couple other things in this year. And again, we look for these opportunities. We had a classic bake sale with our Monroe Arts Center here and partnering with local community. But I want to share those just because, again, we've been pivoting, we've been changing, but we've still been very connected under COVID. So normally when we have our potlucks, they consist of farmer hosts, farm women, and I should describe myself because I am wanting to use more inclusive language, but it's a very gender fluid group and it's a very inclusive group. And it's anybody who identifies as wanting to connect with this type of group. So we have women on all different aspects of the binary spectrum. It's a welcoming space. I apologize if I use the word woman too often. I'm working on that myself, but it's a very, and again, living in a rural area, this is something that doesn't exist often enough, and we can create and cultivate it. So our potlucks are things that often consist of a farm tour. We are eager for information. We're eager for learning. We're eager for sharing. This is April Pruja, who is a heritage hog farmer in Blanchardville, Wisconsin, Dorothy's Range, not too far from Kriss. And she actually has been doing an amazing job of instigating on the meat processing front, nudged to get a butchering program in Madison now, and is organizing, we're so excited, is close to buying a building with a co-op that will be a women-led meat processing facility here in southern Wisconsin that we need desperately. And Kriss will stick in the link in the chat, a link of this organization, this co-op that this group of women founded that has a survey that if anybody's in our area would fill out, Wisconsin, on what are your needs as a meat processor looking for, what are you looking for as a customer, much appreciated. But yeah, the whole idea here, again, very much in that learning circle model, is information exchange and getting to know each other. Then, as I mentioned, in 2012, we said we should go public. And at the time, a small group of us, about 6 women, started a farm tour, which was the first weekend in August. And we started under, I'll be very specific here because I'm hoping these can be some seeds, ideas, nuggets for everybody. But when we started in 2012, we received under North Central SARE a youth educator grant. These are small grants, although they have increased. I think when we did it, it was 2,000 and now there's 6,000 for youth educator projects. So that was our goal, it still is a primary goal of our tour weekend, is to connect with younger people, particularly younger women who are interested potentially in farming and careers in agriculture. So we had a farm tour day, and I mentioned again the SARE Youth Educator grants, because consider it. If you are interested in youth education, as we all are, they're looking for creative ideas. The SARE grants are interesting and helpful in that they go directly to you, the farmer, or you, the organizer, and are very manageable. So this one's coming up. The 11th of November is the deadline for this year, but take a look. It's not a super complicated application. Kriss threw the link in the chat. It's something you could pull off if you've got an idea like this. You can look on past grants too and see what other folks have funded. So that's how we started. And we kept growing since then to the point that we were a full weekend event with workshops like you see there. One of the top one is at Kriss's place where she was teaching felting. We did a lot of hands-on farming, homesteading, food preservation skills. Betty Anderson taught classes on canning. It was a whole weekend, and we had workshops for folks who wanted to start farms, bus tours, culinary events, that sort of thing. And we're on a roll. We're on a roll that, again, reinventing under COVID. We will be back next year. We had, unfortunately, needed to take the last 2 years for safety reasons off because so much of this is integrated in our homes. We're looking to reinvent and possibly just do more things outside next year. Stay tuned, but all good, all good. All right. So the other thing here I want to mention too is that these types of events, when we showcase women growing, when we showcase women farmers, that they really are economically viable for our area. So our our weekend brought in over $100,000 for our local community when it's added in the multiplier effect of tourism and agritourism, as we've been talking about. Folks buy gas, they spend the night, they buy food, they have a meal, all of those things add up. That these things really help our community in a number of ways. And also the media that we attracted with this, which I'll talk a little bit more about, gives us platforms to amplify each other's stories. So a couple of real specific ideas that I wanted to share, because they're things that are tangible and often overlooked, is a couple of years ago, under a different administration in Wisconsin, we had applied for and received what's called a proclamation. And these every state has. And if you haven't ever seen something like this, there's probably something on your governor's website that basically says how to do a proclamation. These are the things you see all the time. They do these all the time of, you know, Apple Growers Week, or things that honor different industries, et cetera. There's a wide range. But despite the fact that Wisconsin leads in organic production, livestock, I think California edges out in produce, but not by much. We have this great organic community, particularly amongst women growing organic food, but we didn't have an official day. So we started and continue with this Wisconsin Women in Organic and Sustainable Ag Week. It's the first week of August, right around when we do the Soil Sisters Weekend. And these are free. Again, it's a small application, but it gives a reason for the media. It gives a reason for the stories to come out there, and something that is probably surprisingly simple for you to do if something like that doesn't exist in your state already. The other thing we started doing about a year and a half ago is doing a monthly column for our local newspaper, in this case, the Monroe Times, a Soil Sisters column, showcasing women's perspectives, the farming perspective, agriculture, rural, all of that. And again, living in a small town with deep conservative roots, getting different perspectives in something like this is huge. And with a lot of small town papers looking for content, it's a happy partnership where we provide the content, and we have this column and reasons to share stories about what our challenges are, our struggles are, and all of that as well. So Kriss will put in the chat, I have this on my own Google Drive. It's my log of our Monroe Times columns. We'll be revamping our website next year, and I'll get them out there. But I want to share them because I find them so inspiring and indicative of the many hats that we wear and all the different things that we do. And also, I'm really looking for some ideas on what I could do with these stories. We've got kind of a book in the making, or I don't know, a storytelling event in the future, something like that, but I'd love any ideas there. So excellent. All right, and then as we rolled with Soil Sisters and the story of bringing us together in a collaborative space, we had some interesting, fun experiences. I had to just share this because, like, this is Della and Kriss and mine's little treasure of our picture with Townie Chucker at Farm Aid in Wisconsin back in 2019. But also showcase the story of collaboration in farming, both our story here, but also the story of dairy coming together throughout our state. And that one is on Farm Aid YouTube, and we'll put the link in the chat there. But you never know where some of these things might lead. And Della's going to share the story of the Kitchen Co-op as an example of a business that started by us getting to know each other at those potlucks. But I want to share just another story of a more recent business startup that is so inspiring. Please check it out. Driftless Traditional Tannery. So these were three Soil Sisters, Danielle, Bethany, and Brandy, who had been coming to potlucks, who had been lamenting to each other about their desire, their shared desire to do processing of hides of various sorts, and how they either couldn't find a supplier, or the ones that they did were very chemical driven, and they were interested in more of the traditional art of tanning, and were other people interested in this, et cetera. And they learned a lot. They learned a lot together. They asked questions, and basically launched Driftless Traditional Tannery right as the pandemic was starting in the spring of 2020, which, you know, on paper might not sound like the most intelligent, strategic thing to do, but as you will see in the stories that we share, sometimes intelligence is what we need. We need a little more leading with the heart and going with our intuition and trying out new things. So they have been going gangbusters. They've been getting great press on what they're doing, learning a lot, working incredibly hard. These are just, you gotta follow their Instagram account because the photos are amazing of what these women are doing, and doing it physically and doing it sustainably, importantly, and providing opportunities to really use the whole animal and use it in ways that we've been doing for centuries, for generations, but we've lost that art. So, so do check them out. And with that, we're going to move on to this cookie bit. And let me put it in quick context personally on how I first connected to cottage food is back in 2010, Wisconsin passed what is still called the Pickle Bill, even though it's technically not a bill, it's a law, that we could sell high acid canned items out of our home kitchen. And this is things like the safer canned items, jams, jellies, salsas, that sort of thing. And I was floored and excited because I never thought we could use home kitchens for public food sale. Now that said, as you heard, all three of us have bed and breakfasts. We love that hosting side. In Wisconsin and most states, you don't need a commercial kitchen to run a bed and breakfast. That's the idea, is you can use your home kitchen. But I couldn't sell you anything. So now I could sell you jam and jelly, and that sounded pretty exciting to me. And then I started seeing, well, what else could we do? What can other states do? Because these are very state-specific laws. And I quickly learned that just about every other state in the country could sell baked goods, but that wasn't legal in Wisconsin. So in all of our cases at the time, it was I could serve you muffins legally at the B&B, but I couldn't sell you the same muffins, even though they were perfectly safe. And people want them, but I couldn't sell them. So Della, why don't you take the story from there? We first went the expected route of trying to get the cookie bill passed.
It was a long journey. And I think part of what you need to remember is when you embark upon a battle, it's going to take time. It's going to take patience, and it's not going to succeed unless you work together. And that's what we've learned as Soil Sisters is we support each other through all these different battles and businesses. And it's been really exciting, really wonderful, really rewarding. And to do this cookie bill with these fine women was quite an experience. We had been trying through normal measures of lobbying with our representatives to get the cookie bill passed, and it had bipartisan support. And I remember a farmers union meeting where we signed a thank you to our representative and a state convention years and years ago. And then we found out, didn't happen. So from there on, it was still probably another 8 years. But yeah, it's been something. So yeah, we started going to the normal routes, and it just wasn't working because we had a certain legislator who would not allow the bill to come before the House of Representatives to vote on it. So even though it had bipartisan support, one person stopped the whole thing for years. And so we were approached by the Institute for Justice because Wisconsin was only one of 2 states left in the country that had this ban on selling homemade baked goods. So we're really slow here in Wisconsin to get on the bandwagon. And it just didn't seem right. So IJ, with their support and wonderful campaigns in the media to help get people's attention on the issue, we went forward, and we were known as the Muffin Mafia and the Freedom to Bake Caucus. Another hashtag is Baking Bad, and it was a lot of fun. It doesn't seem like this should have to be a battle. With all the battles we fight, this just seems like a stupid battle, but it was really important because it empowered people all over the state to have a successful business, to try something without investing thousands and thousands of dollars in something that might not be what they wanted to do, or they just couldn't do, because getting a commercial kitchen is very expensive. And now with COVID, this has proven to be even more important. So we're really happy that we succeeded, but it did take time. And so yeah, with our first there we are. Our first hearing in this beautiful courthouse in Lafayette County. We won, but there was a little catch there, according to DATCAP, that only Lisa, Della, and Kriss won. It was unconstitutional to bake for the three of us, but not anybody else. So our lawyers were like, whoa, wait a minute, that's not right. So we had to go back and get that changed. And that was a few months later. So yeah, it did then apply to everybody in the state, but we lost a whole summer of people being able to go to farmers markets and sell their goods. So that was too bad. But there's just all these little hiccups along the way that you don't expect. And then later on, we discovered that DATCAP was telling bakers that it had to be made with flour. And this was for home baked goods, but there are gluten-free people, and there's granola, and there's all kinds of other items baked in an oven that are safe. And so again, IJ came back just this past year and got clarification from the judge that we could use more than just wheat flour, and that baked goods did encompass anything that was baked at a high enough temperature to kill the pathogens. And so we've expanded it again, but once again, that was a hiccup. And with all of these things that have happened, the legislature still has not put in place the rules that go around this order from the judge. So we don't have an income cap, which is a good thing, but we don't have guidance for the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection either. So when people call them, they still get confusing responses. So we're working on that, and yeah, it's been something. So we're still working on now expanded cottage food legislation, and the IJ is with us once more, and our expanded group of people, and we're trying to get more freedom for home produced food, period. And we'll see how that goes. It's looking good so far, but it's been, yeah, it's quite a journey with the laws and the legislature, and you just wouldn't think.
You just wouldn't think. So what Della was talking about, thank you, Della, is so since 2017, it's been legal to sell your baked goods in Wisconsin with the judge's ruling, but with some clarifications on flour. So we're in a weird situation where we have no law, but it's perfectly legal, and we roll with that. Now with these businesses, well, one thing to backtrack, as Della was mentioning, under the pandemic, these businesses across the country have gone gangbusters because people are looking for ways to work from home, or people were laid off in the restaurant and food service industry and are going to follow their heart and dream and start a food business of their own. Cottage food businesses are like 85% women-led, a lot of anything from stay-at-home moms to retirees. But it's what gets us jazzed about this, and why we feel so strongly about it and been working on it all together, is it can take somebody from literally giving away your cookies to a food business owner overnight. And that's empowering, yes, intimidating, but it's huge and it builds confidence. And that's something in all the work we've been doing here is to try to support from an education standpoint. So on the left there, you see Kriss making truffles in her kitchen because we initiated a new lawsuit this past February with the Institute for Justice on behalf of all non-hazardous goods. Right now, we were just able to bake. Folks might be familiar with cocoa bombs that were all the rage last holiday season to make and sell. It burst in your hot cocoa cup. Totally illegal in Wisconsin because it doesn't go in your oven, which is silly. So Kriss is practicing her truffles there because we're hoping we can get that legal for everybody. We also formed the Wisconsin Cottage Food Association that now has over 600 members and is a plaintiff in the lawsuit. And a couple other things for resources for folks if you're interested is with Renewing the Countryside, we did a pilot for a home-based food entrepreneur virtual conference last April to see could we all get together for the first time, and had over 900 people, again, over 90% women. That was great, and provided a forum to talk about these things, a forum to talk about how crazy a lot of our male-led legislatures, like in Wisconsin, are about making crazy barriers for, in this case, primarily women to start these businesses. So we're hoping to have that back again next year. And the Homemade for Sale book I did, I'm thrilled to talk with you all today, because it gives me a reason to procrastinate on a book deadline I have to do a revision of this that came out in 2015 when I was telling my story about learning about cottage food. I was so excited, but there were no resources. So that's what got us to do this. But so much has changed since 2015 that it needs a big revision. So stay tuned. That will the new version will come out in next year. So that is our. Kriss, anything to add? Because we'll talk about this too when you share your leadership story, because this inspired you to step up to elected office.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add other than, I was mad as hell after this and I wasn't going to take it anymore. So that's a little teaser for later.
There you go. And one side note, but related to cottage food but it stems actually from how we even got started in this, is when we in our community, when we in our individual farm businesses hit a barrier, something needs to be fixed, there are undoubtedly other people who share that need, and we need to gather and fight for it. So hence our fighting for cottage food opportunities for folks. But on a real specific level, we saw a need for farmers to have more recipes that they could sell out of their home kitchen that use what they produce. So, for example, I could take my chocolate chip cookies to the market. Okay, they'll sell, but they don't do anything for my farm because I don't raise chocolate chips. Although if anybody knows how to do that, tell me. I would be very happy to do that. So things like zucchini or pumpkin or fresh fruits and vegetables that we have in abundance that could go in baked goods, often those recipes are somewhat suspect. Without going into the science weeds, there's a science definition of what you can make in your home kitchen for non-hazardous. So, like a zucchini loaf that gets a little mushy in the middle, not good to take to farmers markets. It could get moldy. But we want to develop recipes. So that brought a whole team of farmers by me here in our Soul Sisters group together to work on this project under a SARE Farmer Rancher grant to develop recipes. So we got a zucchini recipe that's safe. Who knew? You have to drain the water out of the zucchini, and pumpkin muffins and even cream cheese frosting. So this is a free resource. Check it out. Share it with your farmer friends who are interested in diversifying into baked goods. And we will be adding more recipes and resources in the upcoming year. So check it out as well. But a side note on those Farmer Rancher grants and SARE resources, those are also coming up in December. And they just went up. For folks who might be familiar with Farmer Rancher grants, now it's one farmer is I think 15,000 and two farmers is 30, which is a significant increase. Let me just say that from past funding cycles. So an easiest way to look at Farmer Rancher grants is kind of that example I just gave you. If you have a need, if I need a recipe for a non-hazardous zucchini muffin, are there other farmers who have this need? Can you come together and create some resources that can be collaboratively shared? But a shout out to Sarah, lots of great resources. But just because there was timing of essence for the youth educator and the Farmer Rancher grants, I wanted to give those a shout out. All right, Della, the Community Kitchen Co-op.
We're moving fast here. Community Kitchen Co-op. Well, this is kind of born out of all the things you've been hearing. For many years, my husband and I and some others have really been thinking about the issue of food sheds and where our food comes from, and how can we shorten the distance between food and consumer and help farmers. And so the Community Kitchen Co-op happened. We had a pilot program in November, right before the COVID stuff. Well, I guess COVID was going on then, but it worked out really well. This was an idea to make meals in the fashion of a CSA, where you would subscribe for a period of time, a month. The pilot was 6 weeks, and would receive prepared meals delivered to your home or at a pickup site. And so we did that back in November, over a year ago. Um, and it was successful, but it was in a restaurant that had no longer could operate because of COVID. And we just kept working as a co-op, to form a co-op of producers and workers, which is an unusual model. A co-op is usually one group of people, but this is two different groups, the growers and the cooks. And or I should say chefs, right? So we worked and worked to get our bylaws and all the things you need and become a real co-op. And then we thought, well, we need a space. So there were lots of spaces in COVID for empty restaurants, and we picked the town of Monticello, which is smack in the middle of Greene County. And at the time we were looking at buildings, um, there were three really nice places, well, maybe not so nice, but three places for sale because COVID had put them out of business. And we picked sort of the in between, not the worst disaster, but a good price. And my husband and I actually purchased the building for the co-op because co-op had no track record. And then, on down the road a few years, they'll be able to buy it and move forward. But so what you're looking at there, inside, this was a restaurant and bar. Inside where the bar was, we took the bar out and moved a whole long system of sinks there where the bar sinks were, out of the teeny weeny kitchen in the back. And then on the other side of where those bar sinks are, big uh, space that is the baker's space where she does all her prep work. So um, we had originally looked at this place. The kitchen was really tiny. We didn't know how we could possibly produce the number of meals we needed to produce in that little space. We had a contractor and an architect and paid money we shouldn't have. Um, and then we thought, well, we need to ask the health inspector, the guy from DATCAP. And I was hesitant because my name is Mud at DATCAP from all my cookie fighting. But we did. We went ahead, and he was wonderful. And he looked at our space and he's like, oh, no, you don't need to do that design. You have much more space if you do this, and advised us. And so for about $20,000 instead of $75,000, we renovated this space into a really wonderful kitchen where we can produce these meals now. And we started the 1st of October, um, and began serving meals in the community. We do about 130 meals. We do a supper and a lunch a week that are delivered to our customers. And so we started with about 130 meals, and that's a lot of work. I know how to cook veggies into good food, but not that big. So we're learning as we go, and see, we can do it. In the process of doing this, as we were waiting to get into our building and have a certified space, it was summer, and we were fortunate to have a WEDIC grant that gave us some money for processing. So we rented a kitchen uh, when they were in a restaurant that on their off day, so we could gather up tomatoes and beans and stuff while they were in season and before we started. So Pat and I there are loading the trailer with boxes of tomatoes that we prepped to go into cold storage, and now we're pulling those out and turning them into tomato sauce so we can make yummy things like the cabbage rolls you see here. And so yeah, we're getting it together. We're learning. It's well received. Um, our goal is to have 90% ingredients from local farms, which we are doing, and our neighboring restaurants are surprised because we're not being hit by the supply chain problems with food. And we do have supply chain problems with equipment and packaging, but yeah, we're in a broken system and everybody can see that. And so this is a way that we hope to really provide a service for our own community, our farmers, feed people really healthy, good food, and it's affordable. Hopefully, it's hard. There's a lot of kinks in this. I think the hardest thing of all is operating as a co-op. It's hard to be cooperative with a bunch of people. Soil Sisters is different. You know, we love each other, but we're not working together every day and making up all the rules and regulations and things you have to do to run a business. And so it's been really, really challenging. We are short the number of people we need to pull this off. So people get tired and kind of grumpy, but we're moving forward, and it's been exciting to see it all come together. I think about our Soil Sisters, they're visionary. You know, we get an idea, and then somebody else says, yeah, that's a good idea. I want to do that too. And we start to come together, and we really make things happen. It's amazing the number of businesses and just wonderful things that this group of women have done over the course of the years that I have known everybody. And so yeah, here we are, you know, feeding the people in our community with local food as a cooperative, and it's going well. So I will definitely welcome questions, and be glad to help anybody. We want to see this operation replicated all across the state, all across the country, in your local communities. It can be done, and it can be done creatively and not super expensively when you ask the right people. So, you know, that's been a big lesson. We kind of stumble here and there, but we want to share everything we've learned so that others can do this, and we're not held hostage by the corporate food system. That we can feed our friends and families good, healthy food with, and support our farmers, because our farmers really get the short end of the stick. And having farmed for many years, it's hard to make a living doing what you love on the land. And so this is a way that we can come together. And I'm really happy and excited about it today, because I haven't cooked for a while. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Della. This is an amazing story, especially, again, happening during the pandemic. And the stories we've shared to this point are illustrative, I hope, of that importance of cooperation, of supporting each other, and of taking on these initiatives more confidently when it's just not yourself, when it is a co-op, when it is a whole group of cookie supporters, et cetera. But it's also important for us to take the stand with individual leadership and putting it out there to run for office and represent all of us at the bigger tables. And with that, I want to turn things over to Kriss, whose story inspires us here locally so much and nationally, of what we can do to support each other and to take a stand in our rural communities. So, you, Kriss.
Well, first of all, I want to bring up the topic of potlucks one more time. I know that Lisa has been encouraged to stop saying it's just potlucks, but I think it is really important to remember that we are building power in our neighborhood, in our food shed, in our state, and in our nation. And we're doing it by eating good food and drinking made up country cocktails, because potlucks really are a tremendous way to build power and build networks. Those of you who have maybe dipped your toes in politics or tried to get something done already know that the pipeline to politics is largely still an old boys club. And there are many, many, many big and small pipelines that move, in many cases, mediocre white men into leadership every day. And our potlucks are a way that we build a pipeline. And a pipeline is just relationships. So if there's anybody on here today who feels like building power or having power is so far away, I encourage you to just start reaching out, eating and talking with some like-minded.
Yeah, what are you doing? Go for a walk?
Nice.
And I hope that Erin ends up on a good walk with some like-minded people, because this is really how we get shit done, is by building our networks. So you already saw a lot of my story through the cookie bill. The cookie bill was really my first entree into the political world at all, fighting for a reasonable cookie bill in Wisconsin. And that was all about merely believing in rural communities and believing that if we had access to a few more ways to make money, we could make our communities buzz and hum and shine and fill up our empty storefronts again. We just wanted to be able to start farmers markets, have bakers, and start selling things in our communities. And the troubles that we ran into, if you're interested in really getting deep into our story, you can watch that CBS Sunday Morning link. It basically shows that we were blocked by one person. We had all the votes in the legislature, in both the Assembly and the Senate sides, and one person, the Speaker of the House, literally refused to put our bill on the agenda twice, 4 years, 2 sessions in a row. One man was able to block us because his biggest donor, one of his biggest donors, was the Grocers Association, and they didn't like our bill. Now, that really did make me mad as hell. And it should make all of us mad as hell that democracy doesn't work. So that was kind of the first thing that got me thinking about politics. But the other thing that got me thinking about politics was spending time on my fellow soil sisters' farms. Our potlucks move around from farm to farm. We really get to know each other's operations and understand what each other's up against. And one of our fellow farmers was up against a giant CAFO, that was a giant confined animal feeding operation that was going to build on a wetland next to her farm. And I had been building my little property, my little farm, for almost a decade. I was an organic farmer. I had a lot of healthy frogs and good juju on my place, which is important to me because I shared at the beginning that I moved to the country to get better from rheumatoid arthritis. And I was gardening one day. I was in my raspberries, and a tree frog landed on my arm, and I looked down, and this frog was looking at me, and I was looking at it, and I had the sudden realization that it wasn't enough to just do a good job on my farm, that if I didn't work upstream and downstream and partner with other people who wanted to create a better future for the environment and our children, that we would not have, it would not be possible for even me to have healthy frogs, because my farm is connected to every farm in my watershed. So from that experience, I decided to take on community fights beyond the cookie bill. And this group of women, Lisa and Della and I and a few others, founded a Wisconsin Farmers Union chapter that quickly grew to be one of the biggest chapters, one of the most powerful farmers union chapters in the state. And I was showing up a lot at all kinds of township meetings that were about water, county meetings. And when I was at the bar one day, a county supervisor who was retiring asked me if I would run. He said, Kriss, doers do. And I think you would do a great job on the county board. And so I signed the papers, I ran, and I am now in my 3rd term on the county board, working at the county board level, staying connected to my soil sisters, trying to affect change with climate policy and environmental policy in the state of Wisconsin, is what convinced me to then run for state Senate. So I did that. Let's see, I guess that was a little bit over 4 years ago now. And that was just a completely wild ride. I actually ran 4 years in a row, two different cycles. I ran for state Senate, and then I ran for state assembly. And I cannot explain to you how incredibly invasive that is to your life. It's a full-time thing. you have to raise a ton of money. You have to know suddenly a ton of people because our districts are gerrymandered. The first race was 2.5 hours across the district. So I had 50 parades that year. In one weekend, I would, on one day, like on a Saturday, I would sometimes do 3 parades and zigzag back and forth across the district. I spent so much time in my car and I was supposed to be fundraising during those car trips. So I always had a driver, but of course we have such terrible cell service that I generally couldn't get much work done during that driving. But I did come to really fall even more in love with the countryside. And I lost twice. But I want you to know that the value of running and running hard and running big and running in community and running with the values of your community in mind, you are able to build a tremendous, powerful platform for getting things done at the local level and at the regional level that I'm not going to say building that power makes running and losing worth it, but it certainly is worthwhile. And I am not the only soil sister who has run. Della is now in township leadership. She ran the year I ran for county board. I believe 3 or 4 of us were new county supervisors. We've now trained multiple women to run at different levels of local government. And if you run into me in any setting, you will find that I will ask you to run, but I will also offer to spend time with you and train you in how to do it. This is a slide that really makes me happy. These were ball jars that Lisa designed for my birthday party in the middle of running during my first race. I basically lost track of all my soil sisters. I could not spend time at potlucks. All I did was run all day long. Raise money, go to meetings, give speeches, meet new people. And I didn't get to spend time with my friends. But in the middle of that race in October, the Soil Sisters threw me a huge birthday party at my farm. So I didn't even have to travel. I finally got to hug everybody that I had been missing for so long. And I think the last slide there is of what was supposed to be my celebration. Lisa, I think that was supposed to be at my win party, but instead it was my loss party.
Well, you know what? So yeah, but I put this picture in here because I was quite pleased with myself on how I learned to make gallons of margaritas at once, because win or lose, we knew we'd need that. And the picture above there is actually the WFAN conference in Des Moines in 2018. So when Kriss was running for Senate, it was Saturday night. We found some great farm to table restaurant in Des Moines. That's our Wisconsin contingency there. And Jen Ellen Holmes, some folks might remember from the Kansas Black Farmer Association. We cajoled her to join us. And we were just thinking of you, Kriss. So this is a photo that we had posted because the election was that following Tuesday. And we're all connected in spirit. So this slide too wanted to exemplify that how we support each other can get creative. I mean, if we can give money, great, but sometimes even just passing that to make some engraved canning drinking jars goes a long way too. I don't know if you can see it. I brought mine for show and tell. Very, very usable still. So yeah, and two, for folks who have worked with the Plate to Politics program at WFAN, there's hard data on this when it comes to women running for office that on average, a woman needs to be asked 7 times to run. So if there's a takeaway there, that whenever there is any opportunity, not just running for elected office where you live, but also applying for a board position or an award, that send it out to somebody. Whether or not they do it is great, but just the fact that we asked, and it's one of those 7 if need be. So yeah, we are organizing right now because the paper for running for county board is due in December, and we need more leadership. We need some changes in our leadership here locally, and something tells me we're not alone.
So running for office is just a tiny piece of leading. And I hope that when people say leadership, you don't think that that means you're at the head of an organization, or that you're a titled leader, or that you're in local office, because leadership is even as simple as showing up at a school board meeting and being one of those warm bodies in a room who is standing up for what's right. If you've been reading the news lately, you know that school boards are really an incredibly contested space. And if you've been wondering about whether you should run for office, I would encourage you to think about school board. School board is incredibly important. You may not have children. Your children may be gone, like mine. I've now have one of my grandbabies is in my school district. But the fact is, this is where it all starts, at the very local level. Running for office is lonely. And like I said, I really didn't get to see my soil sisters for the year and a half that I was running. To Lisa's point, I was asked to run by a soil sister who's very politically involved. We were actually at a soil sisters meeting, and we had gotten into maybe the 3 drinks phase of the night. And we were leaning against the kitchen counter, and she said, "Kriss, why don't you run against Markline?" Because we were talking about this senator who was so terrible for water and the environment. And it took me a year of thinking about it. She asked me again. And then I decided to jump in because I just couldn't take it anymore. And what happened in the course of of these 2 races is I took a lot of crap. And it meant a lot when my soil sisters sent me birthday cards. The second year it was COVID, the second race, Lisa had everybody send birthday cards, and people dropped things off, and she brought over a giant cake. And, you know, it means a lot when your sisters that you have had to ignore for 3 years show up with birthday gifts for you, because they know what you're doing is important and they value you. So leadership can also mean supporting that candidate who's giving their all to run and represent your perspective. There are many things you can do specifically for women, or people who are non-binary, or who aren't just white guys. You can help them with house cleaning, gardening. You can help them with childcare. You can make meals. Yeah, you can donate. You can work in the office. You can get signatures. You can knock on doors. But you can also do really, really, really simple things like, hey, could you use some help weeding your garden? Because I know you're probably not home. It is exhausting. It is also exhilarating, and it changes you. When you enter into politics at whatever level, your understanding of democracy in America completely changes. And I think it would be great for everyone to step up and take the baton for a little while in some office at some level of government, because fundamentally America doesn't work if we're not working. If we're not engaged in our democracy, it is going to be run by the oligarchs, by the corporations. And we all have corporations that we love, but the fact is corporations shouldn't be running America's democracy. But that's what will happen if we don't have people of goodwill entering into the political process, not just as voters, but also as letter writers and candidates and influencers. So I really want to encourage you to stay engaged with politics, as awful as it is right now. This flyer that Lisa put up, this is my truck that I love. And I love my hand-painted signs on it. And it actually says, Kriss Marion, Democrat for Change. But it got photoshopped to say, Kriss Marion, proud to be a liberal partisan. It ran in television ads like that and was on many, many flyers. And that is just garbage. Nobody wants to be involved with that, but we're going to have to get in the arena, as Brene Brown says, if we want to have a voice in the future of this amazing American experiment. So reach out to me if you want some advice on how to get started.
This is so brave.
Excellent.
Chris is so brave, and I
So
just want to say, if you want to run for office at the local level, it's not nearly so hard and mean and challenging. So, run in your township, because that's a good old boys club too, and we can change things from the bottom up. It's a little harder, but it's a whole lot less intimidating.
great. And I wanted to, as we talk about new endeavors and new projects, give a shout out to a project that Kriss has worked on, both us together, a new initiative with NRCS here in Wisconsin Women in Conservation, bringing together women landowners throughout the state to amplify conservation. Kriss has been our fantastic communications person, and you see some of the good work she's been doing there. But you can find it online and join in. But I share that too, because one thing that really always inspires me and all of us about Kriss is we have to keep going, and new things come up and new opportunities come up. And in this case, it's an opportunity to talk conservation, to talk the stories of women conservation, and something that that she threw herself into. So we never know what's coming up. We never know what's there. But we look forward to keeping in touch on all of this, because however it is, there's things to be done. One thing I wanted to mention on the WeWiC and NRCS front is, if you're in Wisconsin or Minnesota, drop me a note, because we're trying to help support not just women, but historically underserved farmers, period, in amplifying voices at the decision-making tables. And there's all sorts of things, from state technical committees to local working groups, and ways to show up and bring your story, and that ultimately influences how funding priorities go. So we're working both top down, ground up, and anything and everything in between. So a couple kind of just nuggets to take home off of some of the things we've been talking about. If you hopefully are inspired to start organizing wherever you may be, rural or urban. I know we've been sharing our rural root stories, but we need to bring women together wherever we are. And this one I share from personal experience, like, commit to lead for a year or two, or like in my case, it probably was 10, but it does need consistency of instigation, especially on the potluck front. And honestly, too many times I've seen some folks get together, and then it's kind of, well, who's doing this next, or who's taking it on, and things can get busy, and we lose it. But I kind of took on myself for those first couple of years of having a potluck schedule, basically getting 6 to 8 women for a year. Now's a good time, I say, to hit people up. Hopefully we'll be able to meet in person come the spring, but to have dates, to have locations, and then we're done. And then it also gives folks things to look forward to, et cetera. It's not a big task, but it helps. And honestly, Della and Kriss, don't take this the wrong way, but I finally feel like I can move from here. And I'm not planning to, but I think there's nothing more rewarding in local organizing to know that you can step back, you can step away, and people are connected, and things will go on in your absence, especially when you're dealing with informal networks like this. We don't have a board of directors or something like that, or a president or anything. But that said, local networks can be incredibly vibrant. We've seen that during the pandemic, when we haven't been able to meet in person, but we have still been extremely connected and supporting. And as you've seen, all sorts of things have erupted amidst a crisis. So commit to lead for a year or 2 or 10, but stick with it. Decide on communications channels. We have a good old-fashioned listserv. We got kicked off of Yahoo a year or 2 ago when they closed their listserv. So now we're a Google group, and nothing too sexy about that. But you know what? It works. I've seen folks organize on Facebook or other things, but it can get limiting. Not everybody's on Facebook increasingly, and everybody just about has an email. So that's been a real vibrant source of info for us as well. And we see all sorts of things in the chat locally here in the last couple of weeks. We've had everything from a woman lose her adult son in a motorcycle accident to another woman get in a car accident with significant rehab and things needed. And we were able to connect on that and keep aware and importantly help support them in whatever they might need. Embrace the virtual space as needed. That one, it took me a while to warm up to, but you know what? We have options today, and we started meeting in the virtual space via Zoom, a little bit more of a facilitated session, not just a Zoom link, but having some agendas and topics and learnings. And we did a tour, for example, of the Driftless tannery at one of them. But it worked in that, we weren't meeting during the winter anyway, when weather was so iffy around here that half of our gatherings were canceled. So we stopped meeting like January through March, December through March. Virtual brought in people who normally didn't always connect, be it through geography, or they were just at a bad time, or they were caring for young kids, or who knows. So it was warmly inclusive in ways I hadn't expected. So yeah, and keep in touch. We are, as I mentioned, rebooting our website and all those things around that next year, my winter project. So I will post to the WFAN listserv and other places. Sure, you'll see that. We also are working on a toolkit capturing some of the experiences we've had and get into more of some of these specifics that will be coming out in 2020 for organizing soil sisters networks in your area. So stay tuned. And a warm invite to come visit with all of us, hopefully opening up our B&Bs next year. Come anytime, but particularly that first weekend in August, we are going to be rebooting the event. There'll be all sorts of cool things. And trust me, after 2 years of not gathering like that, it will be quite the party. So we hope to see you there, and we'll keep in touch on all of that as well. So yeah, and before we take on questions, I want to give a quick shout out. So Sarah Horner is in the Zoom room, who is a friend of mine who I met at a conference, I think at the Moses conference, pre-pandemic, who works for Flanagan State Bank in Southern Illinois. And I was so impressed because she and her bank were incredibly progressive on how can we help small farmers. I was like, can we clone you and bring you to rural Wisconsin? Asking all the right questions and importantly, showing up. And I don't know, Sarah, if you can unmute yourself and give a shout out for the virtual meetup you're hosting.
Yeah, I'm hosting a virtual meetup tonight. It's a listening session. Basically, you talk, I listen. I want to know what your experiences are working with a lender, trying to try financing. Did you have a lender you loved? Like, we want to improve upon those things you liked and we want to avoid the mistakes. But my bank is very involved in organics, and part of the organic community and the farming community that often gets overlooked are small specialty growers. And we want to make sure that we're reaching out to you and being able to help you guys. And we're going to put out a newsletter next year. And so, I'm also hoping to get some ideas on articles, possible authors for those articles as well. But Lisa, I appreciate you letting me give a shout out for it. It's tonight. It's at 5:30. I'm horrible with the time zones and the website and everything, but go ahead and check in there at the virtual meetups. It's in there. And if you're not comfortable being in a group setting, please message me. I can reach out to you directly. And again, I would love to get your feedback on anything you have when it came to financing, or if you're having trouble getting financing. We just want to make sure that we're serving all of the agriculture community, not just, big row crop farmers. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that.
You bet. Thank you. And for folks in the Whova platform, if you haven't had a chance to explore, there's this section called Community. And in there, you'll see both message boards that are vibrant. You can start one yourself for any discussion, but then there's also virtual meetups. And I think there's somebody trying to do a virtual meetup from folks from New York. So join in there too, but those are at specific times. Yeah, and Barbara was asking about this Google group. So good question. I struggle with this sometimes because we want to build local community, yet we want to be connected more broadly. And that's what I'm hoping we can do more into next year, and we'll gladly keep in touch, because this listserv we've been pretty strict, that would be the right word, but of curating it locally. So you need to be from our general region with very loose borders. Or another important one we hadn't really talked about is if you want to move here. And we have had several women literally move. One of the women, Bethany Storm, who's one of the trios of that badass Driftless traditional tannery, came to our Soil Sisters event out of the suburbs of Chicago years ago and said, hey, I want to join, and has been an incredible asset to our community. So but the idea is still developing those local relationships and having that trust factor. So what I'd love to envision, and we can hopefully get some bones around this in this toolkit, is helping folks organize those locally where you are, however you define your region. But generally, I kind of look at it as like an hour-ish from each other. That's sort of at least my maximum what I drive, to come to a potluck, which is, for those of you in urban areas are probably like, geez, but it's rural. We have to drive everywhere. So, but once you get past that, it's a little further commitment. So we're hoping to have some more broader communications and newsletters and into next year that we can rope in, and then hopefully instigate some more local networks there too. Thank you. But yeah, other questions, other topics you'd like to see more on? Appreciate everybody's time.
I want to know where Jess is at, that she's sitting outside.
Oh, hey, I'm in Colorado. It's like
Oh.
70 degrees. It's beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was 19 at my farm this morning,
Oh, wow.
but I'm ready for it because, oh my gosh, it's better than 95.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrific. Well, a shout out of gratitude to Della and Kriss, because we're always roping each other into things, but they always say yes. I'm grateful. We're like, wait a minute, this is an opportunity for me to go through the files and figure out what year we actually first started meeting and out there and share stories. So thank you for jumping in, and Jess for all the leadership on this conference. And I look forward to hopefully maybe seeing everybody in person next November. It's always been a real highlight.
Yeah. Are there any other questions anybody has?
I guess I have a question about the community kitchen. I'm wondering if you have been making meals for like folks in need in your community, for like food access organizations, or if you're giving any, or thinking about giving away any meals for free, or if there's some sort of like sliding scale or way that you're working that into the model.
We definitely have plans for that. We've only been in operation since the beginning of October, and there's so much work to be done. But we do have a fund underway where we plan to do that, and we have some connections within Greene County to agencies that hopefully will help us make that happen. So as soon as we have enough employees to expand a little more and get our fund built up, we definitely have plans to do that. Right now, I actually, on my way home, drop a share off to a very elderly man whose daughter has bought him shares for 3 months now to be dropped off, and because Meals on Wheels don't go there. And so it's kind of special just to stop off and say hi, and he's really happy to see me and give him his food. So that kind of is inspiring to know we need to do more. There are definitely needs like that in the community. And once our sea legs are strong and our business is moving forward the way we want it to, we definitely have that in our plans.
Excellent. Well, please keep in touch and see you next year at the conference, if not, hopefully sooner for sure. But thanks for everybody's time. Thank you, Jess, for floating the boat.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for sharing. This is wonderful. You're so inspiring. It's awesome. I bet everyone's wheels are turning. So thank you. Thank you.
Good.
Well, I hope you all know how to
Thank
reach
you.
us. Is there a way to, are our emails available like in the, however you say it, Wahuva or?
I'm not sure, but I will definitely, I'll check on that. And I think I think there will be
You
some
can
way
find
of
us using it.
connecting. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Great. Thank you.